the end of the season doesn't just mean that NFL coaches get fired. There's also more news. Like this year, 3 teams, the Rams, the Chargers, and the Raiders, all filed for relocation. Interesting note before I get too far into this is that the Chargers and Raiders filed for a joint stadium. This is interesting because they're division rivals, so I don't think that this could go through as easily as the Rams would. But it would cause too many issues, scheduling, as well as a split fan base that the NFL is trying to build back up, not kind of try and prevent the fan base and try and split some. But I do believe that the Chargers, if they go alone, can move. But the Raiders have brought back enough energy and youth to their fan base not to warrant a move. I think that the Raiders are one of the big sleepers going into next year. While the Chargers are not as good, but they weren't really healthy this year, so I mean they could be good next year. And they have very little fan support at home. I remember Bill Simmons and a couple other guys talking about how their home was really a neutral field site because it was mostly opposing teams bringing in their fans kind of deal. And I think they have the better chance to move out of those two. The Rams are the third team that I talked about, and they have the best chance to leave. They're in the middle of a rebuild as a franchise. Their stadium lease is up. I think it's either this year or next year. And I think it is this year, actually. And the biggest thing, at least to me, is that they play in the NFC West. I mention this because they're the farthest east team in the division by a wide margin. This calls for one of two things, in my opinion. The first option is restructuring the divisions and conferences, which I'll do a little thing later. And I'm going to do a whole little piece on my blog about that. And that could be shaking up things and moving teams around to different things or just changing up the format completely for divisions. It's well overdue, but that's for a different time, like I said. The second and more plausible option is to have the Rams move west. The NFC West is home to Seattle, San Francisco, and Arizona. Obviously, Seattle and San Francisco are on the West Coast completely, and Arizona's basically, I think, one state over from California. But St. Louis is also in that, so it's only logical to move that last team with basically no stadium, a rich owner that has a plan for the stadium in LA already, and just move them to LA. The Rams would not even have to change their logo and name or rebrand the team, as they were formerly the LA Rams. They might have to change their uniform colors back to the yellow or gold or whatever you want to call it, but that's not as big as going from the Chargers to like the LA Knights or something like that. So I think that might be a big thing for them to do. And the one thing that the Rams would bring, especially with going back to LA, they would bring excitement for older guys. They'd have like people that grew up back then that had the LA Rams. They would be like, "Oh, LA Rams are back. We might start rooting for them again." And it would bring excitement with that. The older generation might get the younger kids be like, "Hey, this is the new LA Rams. Look at what my LA Rams did," kind of thing. And the excitement that a team can bring is always a major problem for any team trying to relocate or move. And to make relocation work, teams need to have a product or a gimmick to sell at the new city or stadium. Basically, a way to sell the fans on the team. And I think that bringing a team back would be a great way to start. That would be a great start to that. I think that Oakland or the Raiders has the best chance to do that in this aspect, as they have a bunch of young pieces in Derek Carr, Amari Cooper, and Khalil Mack that the Chargers and Rams don't have. The Rams don't really have a quarterback at the moment. They do have an exciting defense, but defense is kind of getting phased out with all the new rules and stuff. So I think that with Derek Carr and Cooper and Khalil Mack all being 3 exciting young pieces that are going to be locked up for the future here in a couple of years by the Raiders, they have a bunch of young pieces to build around. And they can start making a legit team and a legit run into the playoffs here even as early as next year with those guys, if they draft right this year. I still think it's the Rams or Chargers who move, though. Maybe even both, who knows? I mean, that might work a lot better if you have 2 different teams. Just look at the Jets and Giants. One's in the AFC, one's in the NFC, like the Chargers and Rams, and they're both in 2 different divisions, and they split the time there. And the one thing I don't like about relocation is the fact that these multi-million dollar owners, and billion dollar in the Rams case and a couple other cases, these owners that are worth a bunch of money make the public pay for these stadiums. Yeah, they do have to pay a relocation fee, but I think a stadium that's worth $2 billion is a lot pricier and should be paid for by the owners rather than the taxpayers. And I don't understand why that happens. Why do the rich keep getting richer by moving and getting more money from a fresh new fan base by selling jerseys and getting new jerseys to sell? Like with the Rams, they can just, like, they get different jerseys to sell in a different thing or a different market area, and then they have different like hats and memorabilia and stuff, and it's just crazy that these rich owners just keep getting that much richer from that kind of stuff, and they're not even really paying for the move. Yeah, they pay the $500 million fee for the moving fee, I guess it is, or the relocation fee is what it's technically called, but that's still nothing compared to that $2 billion that the taxpayers are paying to make that stadium, where they still have to pay for tickets that are going to be insanely high, and for jerseys and memorabilia, which are still going to be insanely high because that's what everyone in the whole NFL does. Like, NFL, do you really have to take more money and be even more greedy from your fans and charge these huge sums of money from everything, from tickets, like I said earlier, where you're paying like $400 for like a I think it's like 3 rows up for like $400 or something like that, or $100 for nosebleeds, or like 50 for nosebleeds. And then the jerseys, like I've seen jerseys like Bronco jerseys like Manning and Von Miller and stuff like that sell for $120, and hats for like 30. Like, that's just insane that people are paying that much for a jersey or a hat or whatever. But I guess whatever the NFL does works. They're making a bunch of money. Like I said earlier, Roger Goodell is making $44 million a year. It shouldn't be that way, but I guess it works in their eyes, and they can just be even greedier and greedier as long as people keep buying tickets. So I just don't see why people are still paying for this and all this kind of stuff. Like, they shouldn't be. They should be the owners that want to move their team for some reason, either make more money or whatever, that have to pay for the stadium as well, not make the people of the city pay for it. So I really hope that that's not the case, but I still think it will be. That's the only downside to relocation to me, at least that I can see. So guess we'll see what happens in the future, in the coming weeks with these relocations.